This is CBN NewsWatch.
Thank you so much for joining us on this busy Friday. I'm Ephraim Graham. The U.S. Senate will advance the confirmation vote for Judge Brett Kavanaugh for the U.S. Supreme Court. It's expected to happen tomorrow. The move comes after more heated debate over President Donald Trump's nominee, who faces sexual abuse claims. Former Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, who knew him in high school. His confirmation hinges on a few key votes as politicians and reporters talked about it and speculated on it all day. One thing was clear. Both parties are still passionately divided.
If confirmed, he will join 8 other individuals who are charged with deciding how the laws of our land are interpreted and applied. He would be a deciding vote on the most important issues affecting our country and every American for generations to come. Mr. President, Madam President, based on all the factors we have before us, I do not believe Judge Kavanaugh has earned this seat.
We had a campaign of distraction from his outstanding qualifications, a campaign of destruction of this fine individual. What we have learned is the resistance that has existed since the day after the November 2016 election is centered right here on Capitol Hill. They have encouraged mob rule.
News about the vote and key senators who may sway has been discussed all day. Be sure to stay with CBNNews.com for the latest on the vote tonight as well as throughout the weekend. We have seen protesters disrupt the confirmation process and harass senators in the halls. It's forced Capitol Hill police to close some areas of the building and to escort lawmakers through public spaces. But not all spectators came in anger. As Abigail Robertson shows us, some came just to pray.
Tensions are high, but civility is low on Capitol Hill ahead of this weekend's vote on Judge Kavanaugh's nomination, leading U.S. Capitol Police to increase security around the Hill. Swing senators like Susan Collins now require police escorts to protect them from being heckled by protesters as well as the media.
You guys really do, invade my comfort zone? It's intense.
Areas the media and public typically walk through with ease have been blocked these past few days. Protesters have also taken over senators' offices and sent rude and often harassing messages to staff members. The bitter back and forth on the Hill led Senator Rand Paul's wife Kelly to write an open letter to Senator Cory Booker, calling on him to retract statements he said in July that she says incite violence.
Go to the Hill today. Get up and please get up in the face of some Congress people.
Perhaps he didn't mean it so literally, but unfortunately, I think there are a lot of people out there who are very angry and maybe unstable, and they take those kinds of words and maybe take it to the next level.
In the past 18 months, she says her family has experienced violence at a horrifying level, like the shooting at her husband's congressional baseball practice and the assault that landed him in the hospital with broken ribs and lung damage. The Pauls were also one of many Senate families whose home address and personal information was recently posted online.
I think we're crossing a line into a really dangerous and disturbing, chapter.
Kelly says in the past 3 months, things have felt a lot worse, and it's hard for her to watch and hear stories of senators and their spouses being harassed in public, like Ted and Heidi Cruz.
Those people were up in their face, waving their middle fingers and just jabbing their fingers in their face and saying horrible things to them. It's really aggressive, it's violent, it's an assault. That is the opposite of making your views known.
In the midst of this chaos, groups are coming to the Capitol to pray.
I don't think we have to pray perfectly. I just think we have to pray. And if we show up, God will do the rest.
Reporting from Capitol Hill, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Abigail, thank you. While Washington wrangles over the Kavanaugh confirmation, the economy continues a steady climb and unemployment falls to its lowest level in decades. It now stands at 3.7%. That's the longest streak of hiring on record. The president tweeted it's the lowest number since 1969. Earlier this year, the president tweeted, "We have accomplished an economic turnaround of historic proportions." The Federal Education Department is investigating a complaint about a Georgia school district's transgender policy. It allows children to use the bathroom of the opposite sex. The mother of a kindergartner in the district filed a complaint. She says a male student sexually assaulted her daughter in a school bathroom. Pasca Thomas says the school allowed him in the girls' bathroom because he identified as gender fluid. The conservative group Alliance Defending Freedom represents Thomas, who recently explained what happened. And joining us right now is Heather Sells. She's been following this story. First, can you update us any more on that particular story about what's happened?
Right. Well, that story, the mother alleging the abuse, is really what is prompting this federal investigation. And the school district is saying little, but basically pushing back against what she's saying. They're saying the allegations are unfounded and we fully disagree with the characterization of the situation. So interesting, you know, again, we have another abuse allegation here, and this time the school is saying, in so many words, it didn't happen.
It didn't happen. That's what that's the district's official word there.
Well, they're saying unfounded allegations.
Okay. So when a student says they are gender fluid or wants to change genders, how do schools handle it?
Well, there is a whole protocol, but what's really interesting where the debate seems to center is bathrooms. And during the Obama administration, they really said, yes, transgender students should be able to go wherever they want. But the Trump administration has reversed that policy. And so now you have school districts left on their own at the local grassroots level to decide how they're going to handle it. And it's really challenging. We've got a little piece of sound here from an Alliance Defending Freedom attorney.
Okay.
So schools are left in this very difficult situation of saying, how can we know if this is a student just wanting to gain access to the opposite sex restrooms, or a student who genuinely believes they are the gender of the opposite biological sex? As an act of compassion and using policies like ours, they're saying, we will give you a private place to change and use the restroom. We are going to accommodate you so that you can have a place at school that's just yours while protecting everyone else.
So that's another option is, you know, allowing them to change separately somewhere, having their own bathroom or locker room. But a lot of liberals say we want nothing to do with that.
So what exactly is the Department of Education investigating here then?
Right. They are investigating the allegation and whether the school district's transgender policy contributed to a hostile environment for this particular student and other girls.
You've been covering this for a while. I know you can't predict, but I guess, what do you foresee happening in terms of how this all unfolds? No one ever imagined we'd be debating gender.
Right. I don't know that I really see a compromise between the two sides, if you will, other than perhaps a separate changing area. But there's a lot of pushback on that. But what I do think is really interesting is that here you have liberals pushing back on assault allegations. Very interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah, and so I think a lot of people are looking to the Department of Education now that it's a new era, now that it's a Republican administration, to say, you know, what are you really going to decide on this issue?
We'll be watching it, and we appreciate you covering it for us. Thank you so much, Heather. I want to turn now to Canada, where we're following an historic event. More than 300 pastors saying no to a sexual orientation curriculum in public schools. SOGI is a gender identification program that the pastors say confuses young children by forcing them to choose a gender when they already have one. So they drafted the West Coast Christian Accord, which aligns sexuality with biblical principles. The pastors are asking the BC Minister of Education to stop use of all SOGI-related resources now. Melania Trump is wrapping up her 5-day four-tour country of Africa. It is her first extended solo international trip as First Lady. She visited Ghana, Malawi, Kenya, and Egypt. The trip focused on child well-being as a part of her Be Best campaign. Mrs. Trump also visited a former slave-holding facility in Ghana, as well as a national park in Kenya to highlight animal conservation efforts. Jerusalem's mayor plans to remove the UN agency for Palestinian refugees from the city, saying the agency promotes incitement against Israel. This comes days after the Palestinian Authority vowed to keep paying terrorists. CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell explains the latest in the pay-to-slay agenda.
The Palestinian Authority says taking care of those who murder Jews is a top priority.
Even if we only have a penny left, it will only be spent on the families of the martyrs and prisoners, and only afterward will it be spent on the rest of the people.
Earlier this year, the United States moved to punish the PA for this policy known as pay to slay. It put the Taylor Force Act into effect, which cuts U.S. aid until the PA stops rewarding terrorists and their families. Australia followed suit in July, but the rest of the world has yet to act.
The international community, first of all, has to recognize that the Palestinian Authority paying salaries to terrorists is really a symptom of the fundamental problem. And that is that the Palestinian Authority sees killing Israelis and killing Jews as something heroic.
Itamar Marcus is the founder and director of Palestinian Media Watch. His organization has monitored reports and speeches from the region for more than 20 years.
The Palestinian Authority has put these killers on a pedestal. They've turned them into heroes and role models for the Palestinian people. By now, they can't even back off. They can't even backtrack. They are going to keep rewarding these killers with money that they're getting, to a large extent, from foreign donors. You've got Abdallah Barghouti, I would say the most notorious Palestinian Authority mastermind of terror. He built the bombs for suicide bombings in Sparrow Restaurant, Zion Square, Hebrew University, killed Americans, killed Europeans, killed altogether 67 people. He's serving 67 life sentences. These are among the 67 people, and he's already also received about $200,000 already, and he will continue receiving salary, eventually receiving $3,500 a month.
The Taylor Force Act is not only a law, but acts as a symbol as well.
We created a special poster in memory of Taylor Force, an American veteran who was murdered in Tel Aviv. The person who killed him was a terrorist named Bassam Mashalcha, who himself was killed right afterward by Israeli forces. So Bassam Mashalcha's family is now rewarded for life. They received up till now $13,000.
The 2018 budget for rewarding martyrs' families and wounded is nearly $200 million.
Until the Palestinian Authority changes its ideology and sees murder as murder and sees murder as something punishable, there's no one really to talk to on the Palestinian Authority side.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News.
The death toll in Indonesia now stands at more than 1,500 following the devastating earthquake and tsunami that struck there last week. Victims are being recovered across the island, with an untold number of people missing since the disaster struck. Indonesia's disaster relief agency said 1,000 people could still be buried in that rubble. CBN's Operation Blessing is Indonesia, bringing some much-needed food, water, and medicine to those victims. More than 70,000 people have been displaced from their homes. Chip and Joanna Gaines are at it again, not working on another fixer-upper, but doing something really big and exciting. The story's coming up next. One of America's favorite couples and a country music star are trending online these days with their efforts to help others in need. Here's CBN's Jessica Chaco and Faith Wire's Dan Andros.
Well, whether it's for their incredible home transformations or their faith in Jesus Christ, Chip and Joanna Gaines acquired a loyal following since their HGTV show Fixer Upper hit the airwaves in 2013. Today, they are focusing on family and helping the body of Christ by opening their doors to a church in need. Dan, this is a remarkable story. Tell us more about it.
I mean, just when you thought Chip and Jo couldn't get any better, they go and do something like this. And basically a local church there in Waco with a congregation of about 200 to 300 people called Church Under the Bridge. The construction on a nearby highway, I-35, was causing the church to have to relocate for a short time. And so Chip saw this news, was praying about it, thinking about it in his office, and they like that church over there. And so he just said, hey, why don't you come down to the silos? And they shook on it and they got a deal. And then in addition to that, Chip and Joanna Gaines also donated $51,000 to some of the charities that this church is working with.
It's an incredible story, and we have footage or a picture of where the church used to meet, which is actually under a bridge. And so it's really quite an incredible ministry, and it's a wonderful story to see Chip and Joanna open up their wonderful property for this church. Well, they're not the only celebrity couple making a difference. Famed country singer Brad Paisley and his wife Kimberly Williams Paisley have teamed up with Belmont University to open a free grocery store to serve those in need. Dan, free. This sounds way too good to be true. What do we know about it?
Well, the funny thing is the way this actually started was from a couple of spoiled, rotten kids, as the Paisleys described their own children after one Thanksgiving when they were acting entitled and about the gifts and the things that they were asking for at the holidays time. So out of frustration, they said, we are going down to an organization that we can help, a charity organization where we can go and show you guys how to serve. And that experience actually impacted them so much that it led them down the path. And now they have, landed here where they're opening up this store, and they're going to work with a bunch of different organizations, but they will be helping about 3,000 people a year who are in need, and they look at it as a bridge to get them from a tough spot into out of poverty.
That's really incredible. How do the logistics work of this? People can just kind of walk in and for a season receive free food and free care. Is that how it's going to work?
Yeah, I think there's a process where you have to go through these organizations, and they're able to accommodate a few thousand people, but you have to meet some requirements. But once you hit those, then you're able to utilize this store to help you get back on your feet.
Well, in addition to groceries, Paisley noted that the store will have toys during the holidays. That's going to be a huge blessing coming up soon. Job training, health care, and even legal aid. Thanks, Dan, for bringing these wonderful stories. And back to you.
Thank you both. Coming up, Orlando Magic NBA star Jonathan Isaac says there's a funny thing about how Jesus transformed his life. We've got this story when we come back. Welcome back to CBN NewsWatch. If you're a fan of Orlando Magic or simply a fan of the NBA, you've probably seen Jonathan Isaac play. He's been making headlines recently, though, not just about the game, but about his faith in Jesus Christ. And here to tell us about the funny thing that Isaac says happened about how Jesus transformed his life is our sports reporter, Sean Brown. So good to have you back. But first of all, before we get to Mr. Isaac and Jesus, let's talk about how he plays on the court as a player. How is it?
Well, the 7-footer drafted last year by the Orlando Magic out of Florida State. The game has changed a lot for big men. It used to be you pass the ball to the big guy, he's posted up, you give it to him, he turns and shoots or dunks the basket. Now the requirement is they got to be able to handle the ball. Jonathan Isaac's one of those guys who can handle the ball, he can play good defense, take the ball down the court, and stuff it if he feels like it. So he's got definitely handles with the basketball. And again, he's 7-footer, so he can do his thing under the basket as well. Wow. But what's interesting is that when you come into the league, usually as a rookie, you're trying to develop as a player on and off the court. Now he's in his second season. It looks like he's starting to develop into a leader, one of the team's leaders. And he's got players following him to church and everything else. So that's nice. It's going to be a really, really exciting year in Orlando.
Well, speaking of him rising up and becoming a leader, he's talking and sharing more about his faith. What's happened there?
Basically, when he came into the league, he was already a believer. He was already a Christian. And what happens is these guys get so much when you're a professional athlete. I mean, they get money. Everything is given to them in terms of, they have a little bit of freedom outside of practice. They no longer have to go to class. So trying to handle that as a rookie, especially if you're a young rookie, it's kind of hard to handle that. And I guess he had a wake-up call between last year and this year and said, you know what? I've been chasing all these things, and it's not giving me what I was looking for. There was a tweet he put, I'm going to read the first line of the tweet. He said, the funny thing to me about accepting Jesus Christ is that before I made the decision, I was so occupied with all the things I'd be losing. Now, how many of us have made that mistake before accepting Christ? We're wondering, well, I'm going to have to give up sex. I'm going to have to give up this. I'm going to have to give up that. And he realized that once he made the decision to accept Christ and just surrender all, the Lord gave him so much more. And I think that has really revolutionized him as a person, and he's really excited about that and willing to share it.
And nice to see him get it so young. Tell us about the sermon he delivered at Jump Ministries Global Church in Orlando.
It's his testimony. First of all, the pastor is going through text messages trying to figure out, hey, I want you to speak. He's like, no, I really don't want to share. And he shares that in the sermon. And a few texts later, he goes and he really just shares his heart about the importance of having Christ first. Yeah. He shares his heart about him trying to control everything. And when you're an athlete, you want to, you got to play. Mm-hmm. You got to make decisions for your life. Mm-hmm. But at some point, you have to say, you know what, Lord, I'm going to let go. I'm going to let you take the steering wheel. I'm going to let you control this thing. Mm-hmm. And what you'll find is that you'll be a lot better for it. And I think that's really what he's sharing. And the cool thing is, he had some of his teammates in the congregation, which was pretty awesome. So I think that's the message that he's sharing.
Nice. So we see the support from the team members. What are the fans saying?
Well, he's got roughly 20,000 followers. Okay. And if he's got teammates going to church, it's going to be kind of hard to knock that. He's trying to do the right thing. They're really excited about the season. He missed about 55 games last year, so they're really excited to have him back. And the fact that he's got his mind right, it's going to be a really, really exciting season for the Magic this year.
Real quick before we let you go, why is it important for people like him to share their faith?
It humanizes them. I mean, that's the beauty about this deal, is that when you go in, they look like they have everything from us to us who are on the outside. Yeah. But when they come out and say, you know what, all this stuff I have is great, but what's more important, the thing that keeps all this thing oiled like a well-oiled machine, is allowing me to take my hands off the steering wheel and allow God to take control. And kids need to hear that. We need to hear it as adults, because chasing career, chasing money, trying to provide for our families, we lose sight of that. And here's a guy who appears to have everything, and he's saying, no. Christ before all things. Yeah. I almost missed it. Yeah. I almost missed it. Yeah. But I got it back, and I'm all the better for it.
Love it. Sean, thank you so much. We'll be right back. Country music singer and songwriter Roy Feek is hosting his oldest daughter's wedding at his farm. She's a lesbian and she's marrying her girlfriend, Wendy. Feek, who is a Christian, says that when he found out his middle child had same-sex attraction, he was more shocked than anybody. He says it's his faith that helped him to work through it. And even though he's received backlash from some Christians, he felt like the right thing to do was to love his daughter above all else. Feek and his late wife, Joey, were well known for their country music as a duo and their hit television show. They won a Grammy in 2016. They had one child, Indiana, and in addition to his two oldest daughters. Joey Feek died in 2016 after a battle with cervical cancer. Remember that you can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about always at cbnnews.com. We'd love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can do that by emailing newswatch@cbn.com. And always, you can reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hope you'll join us again right here next time. Have a fabulous Friday and a wonderful weekend. We'll see you Monday.